Today I'd like to talk about the subject of colonized language. And I haven't done a lot of research in this. I'm just speaking from like this idea I've been trying to break down even for myself about, for example, me as someone who comes from a colonized country that was Uganda. English is one of the languages I feel most comfortable speaking, even though, like I've mentioned several times before, I'm not absolutely fluent. I make mistakes here and there, but it's a language that I've spoken since I was small. So it's part of my thinking process. It's how I see the world. It's how I decode the world or word the world. I think a lot in English, and thereafter I think a lot in Danish. And I was thinking about how languages hold so much of the way we are, or the way we understand the world, because language builds the world. I remember when I was younger and we had just moved to Denmark, and my friends would ask me, so what language do you dream in, or what language do you think in? And I had never thought about that, because that makes a big difference. Like, what language do you think in, and how well do you know that language? And depending on how well you know that language is how well you be able to navigate that world, or that world where that language applies. Because think of it like when you're a kid and when you don't speak, you don't have language to communicate with your parents or the people around you, you get easily frustrated, because, and I think that's why kids cry a lot. Most kids cry a lot because there's a lot of things you can't put into words. But then when you get older, you also learn it's not appropriate to cry all the time, but but I think one of the reasons we become much calmer is that we can put our feelings into words, and we don't have to just cry, I need to eat, or my nappy hurts, or I have a rash, I can just say that, and that alleviates what I'm feeling because I get to express it in wording. The words you think in, or the language you think in, also limits the way you see the world, in the sense of, like, do you have the words to explain your experience in that language? For example, the book I read about in Denmark, about racism in Denmark, and it was by a woman whose mother I think is white and her father is black. But the thing is that she was talking about how in the Danish language we don't have words to decode the experience of, say, mixed children, or the language to talk about oppression, like black oppression and other things. This is language we have to build as black people and add to the Danish language, because the Danish language is created for Danes who don't experience that usually. It's the hyphenated Danes that get to experience that. And in that sense, like, wherever you are in experience of the oppression, you have the duty to create the language to add to your experience, because your experience goes beyond the norm of the language that you were given. So as a colonizer, you don't give, of course you give the language of the colonizer to the colonized, but if the colonized want empowerment, they have to create another language to navigate their experience as the colonized, but not in the expression or in the image of the colonizer. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm also just still figuring this out for myself, but like how powerful language is, and what language you speak, and how well you know that language. That's why reading is so important. Like sometimes you read a word that you have felt but never had the word for. Have you ever had that feeling, like where you were like, I've had this feeling, but now I know the word of it, and now I can put it into motion more than just feeling, and it stays here. I can actually say it, that this is what I feel. For example, in our language in Luganda, I think my mom told me this, that like we don't have a direct translation of the word like depression or stressed, or there were other words that are common in Western lifestyle that we don't actually have words for in our African lifestyle. And for example, when we had moved abroad, and me and my mom, and I think my whole family experienced a sense of depression, whether it was the climate or just the new way of living that was so different, that you feel this thing but you have never had words to express it, so you don't even know what it is. You just feel it, but you don't have words for it until somebody has a word for it and has a definition of it, and you're like, oh my god, that's what I've been feeling. And in that sense, language is very powerful, because only when you know how to use it and you know how to build it together, how to deconstruct it, and how to add on it, only only then are you really able to express your experience in it and share that experience with others in ways that they can understand. And then also beyond that, translating your experience not only in language but in feelings towards other people is not always a clear translation. For example, like even in Danish we have words like that you can't really translate, and even here in Portuguese there are words that are there's no equivalent to it in another language, because it's an experience. You need to have that experience to have that word, and other people, other cultures do not have that experience, and therefore cannot actually or like directly translate that word. For example, I was reading a post on Tumblr where somebody, I think it was from Twitter, and somebody was saying that they understood why slaves were not allowed to read, because when you read, you get a vocabulary. You build a vocabulary. No, I can't say that. You build a collection of words, and in this collection of words, you build you understand your oppression, you understand your oppressor, you understand power and disempowerment, and by understanding your situation, you can build through words your what do you call it? Your liberation. It's through words that we have this liberation, and a lot of our liberation comes through statements like for example, just to give an example, Steve Biko, the Pan-African South African activist, who wrote, like, he was also a writer, he wrote just a simple statement, but even me reading it years later, it was like, it had power, because words are powerful. And his statement was, I write what I like. You know, simple, but it means a lot, especially when you see who is saying that statement. I write what I like. You know, his right to express his experience as a black man during the whole apartheid in South Africa, and to write stories that he understands, to use words to decode his reality, and to add to his reality, and to create liberation from his reality, and to speak with others that experience his reality through wording, right? You can add that to also how people speak of words as forms of spells, you know? We call it spelling, and I don't remember where I heard that, but like it really struck me as well, like how everything that media does, like whether it's music or commercials or publications, it all comes in the form of spelling, of spell casting, and how you put words together influence how they're received, but also how they shape the world. It's like even when you see like great powerful people and they have people who write their speeches, before I was like, why can't you just speak? Because words are powerful, and somebody who understands how to put words together strategically can hold within themselves a great amount of power. And it's important to understand that in regards to which words are available to us, and if those words are not available to us, where can we get those words? Where can we create those words? Just like in our own living time, like a lot of words have been added to the dictionary. You have to understand language is always evolving as the people themselves evolve, because language is there for us to communicate our experiences as humans. And whoever gets to create language and add to language also gets to tell their perspective of life, also gets to decode their experience in life. And therefore language is very powerful, and the more you learn, the more you read, the more you hear of other people's experiences and how they relate to their reality, and in which way. Of course there's other ways you can create art, you can create sound, but words play a huge part in how we share those things. I guess what I'm trying to say is that obviously the power of words, and not to undermine them, and not only the words you speak, but the words you think, the words you say to yourself when nobody's listening, when nobody's there, when your mouth is not moving. All of those words are spells that you cast either on yourself or on others. You can't take them back. When you say something, you cast an intention, and you influence the outcome of something. Like if you've ever been in an argument, and what you say does matter. Everything you say does matter. Like, it's amazing to understand the power of that, the power of the tongue. Like, even in the Bible, like, to reference my old life, how they say that, and in the beginning there was the Word, you know, that everything came to be because of a word, like, and that word created everything and light and all of life. It was the speaking thing. And I think that's something important that we can learn, that we speak intentions constantly. We are speaking our life, you know, speak death or life. And it's just fascinating to think about that everything starts here, you know. Of course it starts with the mind, but the mind is nothing but unspoken words, like, just, or private words. So everything you think is just a conversation with self, and to learn to monitor that conversation, or to be aware of it and not to do it unconsciously, because whatever you think of, whatever you, and if you think it enough times, it has the power over you. You see it in kids that grew up in houses where they were affirmed of their value, of their beauty, of their uniqueness and their contribution to the world, versus kids who never got to hear that. They could have even maybe never heard something negative per se, but they never got those affirmations, those spell casting that would have made them more powerful, right? And so when they grow up into adults, they have to unlearn or add to or undo or make up for what they didn't get as children. And so words in that sense build the being, and who gets to control the words that being have controls the potential of that being. And when we are aware of that, and we make it our duty consciously to choose the words we speak with, to choose the words we create, to choose the words that mean something to us. I think when we grow in consciousness of understanding how we speak life and death constantly in our life or towards other, we understand again, which is the most important thing in my channel that I want to always give to you in every video you see, that in every little action you make, just by living and existing, you are choosing power or disempowerment. You're choosing liberation or enslavement. You're choosing love for yourself or hate for yourself. You're constantly choosing, and with choosing comes power. Because when you know you have the power to choose, and when you know the options of choices and the consequences of choices, some you might not only know after you've made the choice, then you also learn that you are in fact a powerful being, you know. And even though you might not be able to do everything or to a big scale like everyone, but with your little life, as little as it can be, you play a big part, and that part is important. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. The power of words and language, and whose language you speak. Oh my god, I didn't even get to that. Like, also whose language you speak, because every language has the feeling of the people, you know. And if that language is taken away, replaced with the feeling of the oppressor, then those people are enslaved in the feelings of the oppressor, instead of their own worldview, you know, instead of their own cultural feelings or understandings of the world. So even that is an important part of the decolonization journey, because whose language are you using? Have you added to that language? Is it purely copy-paste? Are you conscious of how you use that language, or how that language was used to enslave you, and therefore how you can use it to liberate yourself? All those things are quite interesting. I think with me, like, speaking a foreign tongue, that's also something I think about, because I'm happy actually that I do speak English, because a lot of the information I've needed to decolonize myself has been in English. But also it's the reason why I want to add more either colonized languages to it, to understand the experiences of other people from other languages, whether they speak French or Spanish or Portuguese. Like, we can share those experiences by bridging the gap and sharing our shared experiences in different ways, or in our diverse backgrounds, you know. And also it's great because on YouTube I get to find all this information that is also in English, right? And I can get that and also understand my own language, understanding Luganda, my native language, and understanding the world it painted, the feeling it painted, the values it had, just with the language it used, is a great part of understanding and unlearning what it means to be colonized and live in a language or in a feeling that is not native to me or to my people. But I think about what was, what the other experiences beyond this language, which a language is more than a language, it's the people, the cultures, the values, and all of those things through decolonization matter. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Please share your insights, and I hope you're well, and thank you for staying tuned on my channel. Bye guys.
We need to change the way we see good and the practice of good. If good keeps you in prison, it's not good, in my opinion.